This week, Eli Lilly announced phase 3 results on a new injectable drug called Retatrutide. Now, average weight loss was impressive 70 pounds, and in some patients, even 85. And within 72 hours of that press release, well, my Instagram feed filled up with credentialed physicians, board certified MDs on gold and black carousels calling this drug the new king of obesity treatment and the best selling drug of all time. 3 days before a single long term outcome has been measured. Now, what I'm about to walk you through is the most important conversation in men's health right now, because the same system that created this problem through processed food, lowering men's health standards, normalizing the dad bod, telling you decline is normal after 40, is now selling you the injection to fix it all. And almost no one is going to tell you the truth about what these drugs actually do and what they take from you and what they're costing the next generation of men. Now, there is no biological shortcut, at least one without a significant price, and we're about to break that all down for you. There never was and never will be. And the men who pretend otherwise are about to find that out. I'm Dr. Andreas Boettcher, and for more than 3 decades, I've been helping men and women optimize their health naturally through functional medicine, clinical nutrition, and performance based lifestyle strategies. But my passion for this work didn't come from textbooks alone. It came from having to fight for my own health. See, over the years, I've overcome an autoimmune condition and sent it into remission naturally. I quadrupled my testosterone without a single injection, pellet, cream, or peptide. And after being struck by cars while training for Ironman triathlons, I went through emergency back surgery and was told by doctors that I would likely never perform at a high level again without relying on medication. Yet here I am at the age of 56, medication free, still training, still competing, still maintaining single digit body fat, still running a practice, traveling the world as an international keynote speaker, and still playing competitive golf and pro-ams, still showing up fully for my family and my life. Now, maybe that impresses you, maybe it doesn't. I'm telling you because there is an entire industry right now that is conditioning men to believe that optimal health can only come from injections, prescriptions, peptides, and pharmaceutical dependency. Now, to be clear, this video is not about attacking medicine, and it's not about saying every peptide or therapy is automatically bad. What I am saying is this: many of the compounds that are being promoted in the longevity and optimization world still do not have long term human safety data for the way they're currently being used. And yet, people are rushing into them before ever addressing the foundational biology that actually creates health in the first place. So, in this video, I want to unpack what concerns me, what the data actually says, and what we still don't know, and why I believe the real path to long term performance and resilience and hormones and energy and longevity that we all seek still starts with restoring the systems the body was designed to run in the first place. Now, if you want the full article, see the caption below. Now, let me start with what's true, because I will not insult you by pretending the drugs don't work. They do for what they do. Semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy was the opening act, roughly 15% body weight loss at 68 weeks. Trizepatide, Mounjaro, Zepbound raised the ceiling to about 21% or so. And now retatrutide, a triple receptor agonist, just produced phase 3 results that are genuinely unprecedented in the history of weight loss pharmacology. 28% body weight production in 80 weeks, 30% at 104. That is bariatric surgery territory, achieved with once weekly injections. Now, I want you to sit with that for just a second, because I'm not dismissing what these molecules can do on scale. They are the most effective scale moving drugs in metabolic history. Now, anyone who pretends otherwise isn't reading the literature. But weight on a scale is not health. Weight loss is not the same thing as fat loss. And short term efficacy in a controlled trial is not the same thing as long term outcomes in a real human life lived across a decade or three. So let's open the hood and look at what these drugs are actually doing inside the body of the man who's actually taking them. Now, before we talk pharmacology, I need you to step back and look at the entire economic machine, because the drug is the last link in a chain, and the chain matters more than the link. Here's the chain. Big Food spent 40 years engineering the American diet for maximum shelf life, maximum profit margin, and maximum consumption. Ultra processed foods are formulated to override the body's natural satiety signaling. refined carbohydrates, industrial seed oils, refined sugars, engineered flavor compounds. That is not an accident. That is the output of billions of dollars of food science research, much of it borrowed directly from the tobacco industry's playbook on engineered addiction. You did not lose control around the bag of chips. The bag of chips was designed at a molecular level and neurological level to make you lose control. Your great grandfather didn't need willpower to stop at one cookie because the cookie he ate didn't contain the formulation that defeats willpower. The dietary guidelines that were supposed to protect Americans, written over 40 years ago by committees with deep financial entanglements to the same food industry, whole grains, low fat, high carbohydrate, promoted as the path to cardiovascular health. And when the actual outcome data came in, well, the eating pattern tracked with the steepest climb in obesity, type 2 diabetes, and metabolic syndrome in modern human history. The food pyramid was marketing document for the agricultural industry complex, masquerading as nutrition policy. Then the sick care system metabolizes the human consequences of that food environment for profit. Type 2 diabetes, one of the most preventable conditions on the planet, is a billion-dollar disease. Cardiovascular disease is a billion-dollar entity in and of itself. Fatty liver, sleep apnea, joint replacement, depression, erectile dysfunction, every downstream consequence of the food environment is its own profit center. It's its own specialist. It's its own drug class and its own quarterly earnings report. Now, the pharmaceutical industry arrives with the GLP-1 class, sold as the cure to the very disease the system created, sold back to the same patients at $400 a month for life. That is not a conspiracy theory. This is industrial economics. You do not need anyone in a smoke filled room. You just need three sectors: food, sick care, and big pharma, whose economic interests align around exactly the same outcome: a population that gets sicker over time, that develops chronic conditions that require lifetime management and keeps paying for the food that drives the disease and for the medications that treat its consequences. See, the system is not broken. It is working exactly as designed. The product is your chronic disease. You are not the customer. You are the inventory. Now, within 72 hours of Lilly's announcement, my feed filled up with the same template: credentialed physicians, gold and black design systems, 10 slide carousels. Let me walk you through what those slides actually say, and more importantly, what they leave out. Because once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. Slide number one: Retatrutide just dropped 30% weight loss, may make other GLPs obsolete. True statement about the scale. However, zero mention of what tissue the weight actually came from, what happens when patients stop, or what the drug costs across a lifetime. Now, slide number 2, 3, and 4. 28%, 70 pounds, 45% of participants lost a third of their body weight. All true, all scale numbers. None of these slides report body composition. None tell you what fraction of that 70 pounds was muscle versus fat. None acknowledge the prior GLP-1 trials lost 25 to 45% of weight from lean mass. Slide number 5. And this is the quietly dangerous one. 65% of participants drop below the obesity BMI threshold. We are reversing disease classification. BMI is a height to weight ratio that does not distinguish between fat and muscle. If you lose 30 pounds of fat and 10 pounds of muscle, you reverse your BMI classification. You have not reversed your disease. You have changed a number on a chart while losing the structural tissue that determines whether you survive in your 70s and beyond. Now, slide number 6, fewer discontinuations than placebo, 4.1% versus 4.9. That 4.1 is the form of a controlled trial where participants get ongoing physician contact, dose titration support, free medication, and the social accountability of being in a study. Want to know the real world discontinuation rate for non diabetic GLP-1 users? 65% are off the drug at 1 year, 84% at 2 years. Now listen to those two numbers again: 4.1% in the trial, 84% in real life. That is the gap between the marketing and the reality. Now, slide number 7, beyond weight loss: blood pressure down, triglycerides down, cholesterol down, waist circumference down, inflammation down. Now, pay very close attention here because every single one of those biomarker improvements is achievable through diet, training, sleep, hormone optimization, stress management, good old fashioned solid nutrition. Every one. I've watched men in my practice produce more impressive shifts on every one of those markers in 12 weeks of disciplined work than the Retatrutide trial produced over 80 weeks. And the difference is the improvements I produce in my clients persist for the rest of their lives because they own the mechanism. The improvements the drug produces vanishes the day the prescription stops being filled. You are not buying metabolic health. You're renting the appearance of it at $400 a month or more for as long as you keep paying rent. Now, slide number 8, safety you can trust. No cardiac signals, no liver signals. This is the slide that, as a physician, makes me genuinely angry. The trial is 80 weeks long. The drug has not been on the market a single day. The UK regulator just updated GLP-1 safety information after 574 cases of acute pancreatitis and 10 deaths, linked to existing GLP-1 drugs that also clean cardiac and liver signals at 80 weeks. Gastroparesis label updates came in after 80-week clean drugs went into the real world. Now, there were no safety signals at 80 weeks. Remember that. That's a true statement, and a meaningless one at that. See, the safety signals for this entire drug class have, without exception, emerged in years 3, 4, and 5 of real world clinical or post marketing surveillance, not in the registration trials. When a marketing campaign omits the same 5 facts every single time, those 5 facts are the story. Everything else is noise designed to keep you from finding them. Now, I need to confront the single most effective conversion tool in the GLP-1 marketing playbook, and it is profoundly dishonest. And the pitch goes like this: we understand. You've tried every diet, every exercise program, Whole30, keto, intermittent fasting, CrossFit, Peloton, trainers, apps, and nothing has worked. It's your genetics. Your body is broken, and it's all working against you. Obesity is a chronic disease, and you're not at fault. You deserve a real medical solution. Now, every part of that pitch is engineered to do one thing: absolve the patient of responsibility, while simultaneously rendering them a permanent subscriber. Now, let me say what almost no one in this space will say out loud, because saying it costs you popularity in a culture that has decided personal responsibility is unkind. If you were actually doing everything right, you wouldn't be in the position that you are in. That's not cruelty, that is biology. See, the human body, given adequate protein, real food, sufficient sleep, consistent movement under load, intelligent stress management, and optimized hormonal status, defaults towards metabolic health. The reason your body is not doing that is not because your system is broken or it lacks orange mini bottles or a lifetime sentence of injections. It's because one or more of those inputs is likely missing, and usually more than one. When a man tells me he has tried everything, what he actually means is, when we walk through it together, is some version of this. He has done a series of 2 week extreme diets he could not sustain, separated by months of returning to the food environment that made him sick in the first place. He has done sporadic cardio with no meaningful resistance training, no plan, no progressive overload. So his lean mass has been declining for 2 decades while his fat mass has been climbing. He's sleeping 6 hours a night and calling it adequate because his calendar will not permit more. He's eating quote unquote healthy foods that are still ultra processed: protein bars, low fat yogurt, natural granola, restaurant salads dressed with industrial seed oils. He has never had his hormones properly evaluated. Testosterone has been declining since 40, and cortisol wrecked from chronic stress. Thyroid never been run as a full panel, and no one has measured his inflammation or his ApoB even. And he's been working with a primary care physician who has 15 minutes per visit, who has never asked a single question about his sleep, his stress, his training, or his protein intake from a physician that, quite frankly, needs our work themselves. That's not trying everything. That is trying a series of disconnected, half implemented, non personalized interventions inside of a sick care system that is structurally incapable of delivering the work that would actually matter. You have not failed. You have never been given the protocol that could succeed. And those are not the same thing. And the industry that profits enormously from making sure that you confuse them all. Now, here's the question almost no one is asking in the breathless Instagram coverage. When a man on Retatrutide loses 70 or 85 pounds, what tissue is he actually losing? The answer from the registration trials of the prior drugs in this class is uncomfortable. In step one trial of semaglutide, participants lost roughly 15 kilograms of body weight. Now, of that loss, approximately 6.9 kilograms or 45% came from lean body mass. Now, listen to that again. Almost half the weight loss on semaglutide in the pivotal trial was not fat. It was muscle, it was bone density, it was organ tissue. It was the structural and metabolic infrastructure that keeps you alive, mobile, strong, and resilient. Now, trizepatide does a little better, 25 to 34% lean mass fraction in SURMOUNT 1, but the real world data emerging in 2026 is actually worse than the trial suggested. Now, a recent analysis of more than 670,000 patients on these drugs found that roughly 1 in 10 trizepatide users develop what researchers call depletive metabolite, more than 20% weight loss with more than 5% lean muscle loss in a single year. 1 in 10. Now, why does that matter? Why am I spending so much time on this point? Because muscle is the organ of longevity. It's the largest endocrine organ in your body. It is the primary site of glucose disposal and an engine of your metabolic rate. It is the structural reserve that determines whether you survive a hospitalization at 65 or 70. It is also the reason a strong 60-year-old can carry his grandchild upstairs and the reason why a weak 60-year-old falls and breaks his hip. The single best predictor of all-cause mortality in men over 50 is not body fat percentage. It's muscle mass, grip strength, and walking speed. And we are now writing prescriptions at scale for a class of drugs in which 25 or 45% of the weight loss is the very tissue that determines how long and how well you live. You don't want to lose weight. You want to lose fat. And those are not the same project. And the drug doesn't know the difference. Now, here's where the story gets predictable. Now, you've watched this industry long enough. A drug class enters the market, an extraordinary efficacy, and a clean safety profile in controlled trials. It becomes an immediate blockbuster. However, when you launch it into the real world, it exposes side effects that the trials were not long enough or large enough to catch. And the industry's response is to never slow down, even though 30 to 40% of those medications often get recalled because of unknown side effects. The industry's response is to develop the next drug to treat the side effects of the first one. That drug introduces its own side effects, and then a third drug is developed to address those, and on it goes. This is the pharmaceutical treadmill. It is the most reliable pattern in modern medicine, and it's already in motion with GLP-1s. Now, Eli Lilly, the same companies whose Retatrutide carousel is filling your feed this week, paid $1.9 billion in 2023 to acquire a company called Versanis Bio, specifically to develop a drug called bimagrumab. Now, this is a monoclonal antibody designed to prevent the very muscle loss that GLP-1's drugs cause. Now, let me say that again. The same company selling you the drug that causes muscle loss is already building and announcing the second drug you'll need to take to protect yourself from the side effects of the first drug. 2 injections a month, 2 prescriptions, 2 sets of side effects. And keep in mind, this bimagrumab is not a benign molecule. It was originally developed for muscle wasting disease. Now, Novartis abandoned it after a failed trial, and its earlier studies showed pancreatic and metabolic signals that have not been fully characterized in obesity populations. Now, extend that logic forward. This bimagrumab will cause its own side effects in long-term use, and it will, because every drug does. What happens next? Well, a third drug enters the development to address those. The combination protocol becomes 3 drugs and then 4. This is not paranoia. This is the entire history of pharmaceutical medicine. It happened with statins, and then it happened with enzeptamide. It then happened with PKSK9 inhibitors. It also happened with protein pump inhibitors, with SSRIs, and it happened with the most catastrophic way medicine has ever seen with opioids, a drug class promoted as the answer to chronic pain that created an addiction epidemic, which then required a new class of drugs to treat the addiction, the first class cause. Now, the first question is never asked. Nobody pauses to wonder whether the original problem might have a non pharmaceutical answer. The wheel just keeps turning, and the patient is what gets wrapped up inside it. If everything I've said so far were the entire story, I would still be making this video because it is not the entire story. And this next part is the part I find genuinely difficult to talk about without anger. We're now prescribing these drugs to our children. The FDA approved liraglutide for adolescent age 12 to 17 in 2020, semaglutide for the same age group in December of 2022. Pediatric GLP-1 prescriptions have increased by roughly, get this, 600% in the last 5 years. Now, 1 in 5 American adolescents is now classified as obese, a number that did not exist in previous generations in American history. And we are responding to this by writing prescriptions for 12-year-olds for once weekly injections they will, by the logic of pharmacology, need to remain on for the rest of their lives. A 12-year-old started on semaglutide today will be on this drug or its successors for what, the next 70 years? We do not have a 70-year safety data, and we don't even have a 7-year safety data in this population. We do not know what these drugs do to bone density during peak skeletal accrual years. We do not know what they will do to lean mass acquisition during the most important muscle building decade of human life. And we do not know what they will do to developing brain's relationship with hunger, satiety, food, reward, self regulation. We just don't know. And we're doing it anyway because the alternative, well, is harder, right? Let me say what almost no one in mainstream pediatric medicine will say out loud. Childhood obesity is not, in the vast majority of cases, a genetic disease. It is an environmental and behavioral disease. It is a disease of ultra processed food, screen mediated seduction, sleep disruption, the loss of family meals, the loss of physical play, the loss of household nutritional standards. It is a disease in most cases of the habits learned at the kitchen table from the parents who set the standard or failed to. When we hand a 12-year-old a once weekly injection instead of changing the kitchen, we're not treating their disease at all. We're medicalizing the consequences of an adult environment we have decided not to fix and accept as the new normal. We are telling that child at exactly the age when their relationship, their body is being formed, that the answer to hard biological problems is a needle, and that the work, the cooking, the moving, the sleeping, the discipline of attention is not something we're going to ask their family to do. I do not believe we're going to fix the childhood obesity epidemic by injecting children. I believe we're going to fix it to whatever extent it can be fixed by helping their parents become the example, by helping the 50-year-old executive who walks into our practice to get lean, strong, energetic, and metabolically healthy and present at the dinner table, by making sure that when his 12-year-old looks across the table, he sees a father who eats real food, lifts weights, sleeps 8 hours, plays sports, manages stress, and has not outsourced his health to a subscription pharmacy. See, children do not inherit obesity. They inherit the kitchen. They inherit the schedule. They inherit the values, and they inherit the standard being set by the family. Now, I want to lay this out plainly because the entire marketing premise of the GLP-1 industry rests on the assumption that you cannot get these results without the drug. That assumption is false. Every single benefit those carousel slides celebrate is achievable, and in most cases exceeded through the work we do at its only halftime, without the cost, without the dependency, without the side effects, without the muscle loss, without the rebound, and without unknowing the long-term safety profile. Let's talk about weight loss. The drugs produce 15 to 30% body weight reduction across 80 to 104 weeks, 25 to 45% of which is lean tissue. Disciplined functional medicine work produces 15 to 25% weight reduction in the same time frame, with the loss almost entirely coming from fat. and often the simultaneous lean muscle gains as a result of the work itself. The drug shows a bigger number on the scale, the work produces a better body, period. Blood pressure, triglycerides, cholesterol, inflammation, insulin sensitivity, both the drug and the work move every one of those markers. The difference is the drug induced changes vanish the day the prescription stops. The work induced changes persist for life because the patient now owns the mechanism. And here's what the drug cannot do, no matter the dose, the duration, or the formulation: it cannot build muscle. No GLP-1 has ever added a pound of lean tissue. The work adds 8 to 15 pounds of lean muscle in a year for most male clients who train properly and eat adequate protein. It cannot restore testosterone. The work through fat loss, sleep restoration, micronutrient repletion, training stimulus, and lifestyle modification do. It cannot raise VO2 max. The work routinely adds 5 to 10 milliliters per kilogram per minute in 12 months, independently associated with a 10 to 25% reduction in all-cause mortality. It cannot increase bone mineral density, and it cannot improve sleep architecture. It cannot restore gut health, and it cannot fix the microbiome dysbiosis driving the systemic inflammation in the first place. And most importantly, it cannot build the relationship with food, with training and discipline that you need to be the man your children inherit from you. No drug has ever done that, and no drug ever will. The drug rents you a number on a chart. The work builds you a body, a metabolism, a presence, and a legacy. And those are not the same purchase. Now, this is what I mean when I tell men in my practice that the inner pharmacy is more powerful than any outer pharmacy. Your body, given the right inputs, produces every chemical signal these drugs attempt to mimic naturally, sustainably, and without a monthly invoice. Optimal endogenous GLP-1, GIP or glucagon, insulin sensitivity, growth hormone, testosterone, thyroid function, inflammatory tone are all available to you. They are produced by the way you eat, the way you train, the way you sleep, the way you handle stress, the way you live. That is the inner pharmacy and is the most important, most sophisticated, most personalized, most precisely calibrated pharmaceutical system ever designed. It came pre installed and it requires no prescription, no injection, no side effect profile, and no monthly fee. Only the discipline to use it and tap its potential. Now, I want to be clear about my position. I'm not a 20-year-old something influencer. I'm not an ex pro athlete whose career was fitness. I'm 56 years old and I run a clinical practice and I'm raising a family. I travel as an international keynote speaker. I've been a competitive athlete my entire adult life, 3-time Ironman, triathlete, masters men's physique competitor, 6 handicap golfer playing in FSGA events and pro-ams. And I have also been through it. I've overcome an autoimmune condition. My testosterone crashed to 216 nanograms per deciliter at the age of 47. I had emergency back surgery after being struck by cars while training for triathlons. And I resolved every one of those things without a single medication, cream, pellet, or even peptide through the exact framework I teach our clients. Now, I sit here today at 56 with single digit body fat, an empty medicine cabinet, and the metabolic markers of a man 20 years younger. Now, I tell you this not to impress you, but because I want you to understand the position that I'm speaking from. I'm not theorizing, I have lived this, the breakdown, the rebuild. And I do this work every day with men who built the kind of business and the kind of life they now want to spend their second half actually enjoying. In other words, I know what the work costs because I paid it. I know what the shortcuts cost because I've watched them happen to men who took it. Now, I want to be direct with you about my own incentives because I owe you that. As a board certified chiropractic physician specializing in functional medicine, I've spent the last 33 years doing the true work of health, wellness, and fitness. Across 33 years and thousands of clients, my mission has stayed the same: to help men and women prevent, reduce, and where possible, eliminate their dependency on the pharmaceutical system that would rather see them as a customer than as a person who has reclaimed their own biology. Now, I'm not anti medicine, I'm pro medicine in the right order. That is why, when it is genuinely necessary, I work with a network of medical providers I trust, physicians who share the same philosophy of root cause care and understand that pharmaceuticals are a tool, not the starting point. Now, I could easily partner with those colleagues and scale a TRT or peptide arm of this practice and ride the largest gold rush in the history of weight loss medicine. The infrastructure is there, the patient demand is there, and the margins are extraordinary. But I'm not going to do it because the work I do is not in alignment with that race. It is in alignment with the Hippocratic Oath, which is first, do no harm. And with the deeper principle that has driven every successful client I've ever worked with, the inner pharmacy is always more powerful than the outer pharmacy. Your body, given the right inputs, will produce every signal the drug is engineered to mimic naturally, sustainably, and precisely without that monthly invoice. Now, the outer pharmacy can rent you that result for $400 or more a month with the side effects, with the muscle loss, the rebound, the unknown long term safety data, and with a dependency that grows deeper, well, the longer you stay on it. The inner pharmacy can give you the same result and a body and a metabolism and a presence and a legacy the outer pharmacy was never and never will be capable of delivering. The difference between renting and owning is the difference between every client I have served for over 33 years and every patient that pharmaceutical industry is about to enroll for the next 30. By now, you've likely guessed that I believe in doing the work because it's the work that actually makes you metabolically healthy, fit, lean, and strong. Because the work is what produces a man at 75 who can still hit a 6 iron 200 yards, lift his grandchild over his head, sleep 8 hours, and look across the dinner table at his wife with the same energy he had at 45 or younger. The drug doesn't produce that man, the work does. Because somewhere out there, there is a 12-year-old whose future does not have to include once weekly injection. And if his father decides today to become the man his son needs to see at the head of the table, this is the only intervention that has ever actually worked at scale. It is the only one that ever will. If you're looking for the easy answer, I'm not your guy. There are dozens of telehealth clinics and growing number of credentialed positions on Instagram that will sell you the throne, the crown, the gold and black slide deck. Go to them with my blessing if that's what you want. But if you want to be the kind of man who built something for doing the work, the unglamorous daily compound work that nobody saw, and you suspect that same principle applies to your body as applied to your business, then we should talk. The second half of your life is the half that matters. The body you take into it is the body you build now. The example you set is the example your children will inherit. There is no shortcut. There never was. And the men who try to take one are going to find out soon what the price of that shortcut actually costs. Now, if you want to go deeper to uncover the root causes behind your energy, your hormones, your metabolism, and your performance without the orange mini bottles and injections, without dependency, without renting your body back from a pharmaceutical company, then I invite you to apply for our Wealthy Body Protocol. Together, we'll review your health history, your goals, your lab work, and determine if a personalized lab based root cause approach is the right fit for you. Now, there are limited clients accepted each quarter. The link to apply and the link to the full article that backs up every claim in this video are in the description below. If this resonated with you, if you know a man in your life who needs to hear it, share this video with them. Subscribe to this channel and come back next week because we're just getting started. I'm Dr. Andreas Boettcher. Stay strong and remember, it's only halftime.